Hello, I'm David Flanders. I'm from the OpenStack Foundation, and we're broadcasting today to talk about an exciting new little effort, kind of a trial community that we're having a go at for application developers and anyone wanting to learn cloud apps. I am here with my colleague, Tom Fiffield. Hey, Tom, want to say hi?
Hi, David. How's it going?
Not too bad. And today what we're going to do is we're just going to have a little walkthrough around what we're proposing here. So in Austin, we're going to run an alpha or a beta trial of what we're calling a Cloud App Dojo. So this is a training forum to help teach people how to deal with the different ways that you can actually create apps atop OpenStack. So without jumping in too much, Tom, do you want to say anything while I get the presentation loaded up here? Any overall advice or guidance before we get going?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good to highlight just how important this community is. Effectively, we need to build up this community of app developers around the world who are going to be responsible for the eventual success of OpenStack.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom. I could not have said it better myself. Let me get to the correct slide here. So to start us all off, so yes, so this is all about, and please do, Tom or anyone else, stop me while I'm going and ask questions either in the Hangout or just hop on and ask me a quick question, because yes, this stuff can get confusing sometimes. But this is all about how to run a Cloud App Dojo, so training for application developers. Specifically, this is an orientation guide for would-be trainers, or to stay with the metaphor of dojo, Sensei. So the learning objectives of what we'll go over for the next 20 minutes, it's hopefully a pretty quick, short presentation just to explain what this forum for training is like. Oh, and while I'm giving these learning objectives, it is worthwhile having a look at the links that I've, loading up the links that I've had below. So the people on the call, if you want to load up the Etherpad link and the first app guide, as well as the GitHub repo, while I'm talking about these learning objectives, it would be a good idea. So the first thing that we're going to go over today is we're going to help you set up your learning space. So what we call the App Dojo, and that's all about solving collaborative problem solving. And we'll get into that more, what that exactly means. 2, we'll assign learning roles to assure participatory learning. So we use a basic form of pair programming, which I'm sure many of you will be used to. Number 3, we will help facilitate training challenges as Sensei for participants to solve together. 4, craft fun learning challenges, also known as kata, for varying skill levels. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can share your learning challenges with the wider community so that we can all take advantage of the larger knowledge base of how to do good learning challenges and whatnot.
So David, I noticed that one of those links there was for something happening in Austin. So can you explain what that is?
Yes, thank you so much, Tom. That's really important because, of course, this presentation, this is trying to set up an event in Austin where we'll be having a alpha or beta training to help people to get to know what this kind of style of training is like. So if you're not sure about being a trainer, I'd really recommend you come along and experience what it's like at Austin. Naturally, we'll post notes and like that on the Etherpad that I provided as well, but I'll go over that a little bit more in a moment.
Indeed, and if you are watching this from the future, we're recording this on April 11th, and the OpenStack Summit in Austin is a couple of weeks from today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Yes, time in the web is always a difficult thing. Okay, so what is a dojo? So this little metaphor that we're using for training, let's get right into that. So by a Code Dojo or a Cloud App Dojo, what we're calling it, there's 2 things to be mindful. There is a precedent. So Cloud Dojos or coding dojos started in Paris around 2010. And there actually is now a foundation around Coding Dojo Academy. And this is mostly for kids and teenagers. And what's exciting about that, of course, is if you can teach kids and teens how to do this stuff, you can teach anybody. So it's a good construct to start with. One of the really nice things about this metaphor is, and the Coding Dojo Academy, is that they really are in support of diversity. In fact, they have a fantastic community with lots of girls in IT coming up in the space. And that's something we'd really like to mirror as well, is make sure we have a diverse community. Also, this forum, the way you can do these trainings, is really good for both experts and novices to learn together. Also, there's some really good examples if you look around at other dev communities. Both Perl and Ruby have a weekly pub quiz or quiz listserv, which they provide people to try to solve different problems and to participate in a really fun way. And I can't stress how important fun is about all of this, that allows people to learn and work together. Also, if you've ever been to Python events, Python will often do pub quizzes before the conference starts, where teams will get together and they'll also try to solve different challenges that are posed to the community. But we'll return to that. I'll talk more about how do you create a good learning challenge in a moment. The other thing which I want to just kind of emphasize is the theory behind this. So it's not just about, code dojos and what a dojo is. There's two key learning theories behind this, or pedagogies, as you will, the science of learning. One is called problem-based learning, and you can look this up on Wikipedia actually, but to paraphrase it, problem-based learning is all about learning through solving open-ended scenario problems. And the second big learning principle is participatory learning, which is about getting everyone to play a role, that there's not just one teacher talking to many people. And obviously, it's really easy to fall into that trap with having a trainer who just goes through a massive slide deck and kind of, PowerPoints people to death, or, just chalks and talks the entire time, or codes and talks the entire time. So those are really the two key things which we're trying to advocate for inside of this community. But of course, the key question that I'm sure you're all asking is, what are you actually talking about when you talk about a Code Dojo? Well, in the spirit of being having a bit of fun, I'll talk us through this. This is a nice little cartoon in XKCD style, and we'll return to this a couple of the times to break this down. But the key thing to note right now is obviously it's an easy way to set it up. All you need is one computer, you need a projector, you need everybody around a table. This could be a boardroom table, it can be a conference room table, and you have two pair programmers at the head of the table, one who operates the computer and the other one who helps play the part of the teacher. And then, of course, there is the key person, which is hopefully all of you wanting to be trainers or sensei, who are up in the far left-hand corner, who are actually creating the good problems which these people can solve and be able to help with. But I'll get into this more, and like I said, we'll return to it. The other quick thing I just want to try to stress to everybody is that you don't have to do a dojo in this way. There's no reason why the wider community can't continue to do training the way they want, be that chalk or talk or PowerPoint or certification training, after work meetups, brown bag lunches. You really can do this training any way you want, so long as you adhere to creating really good problem sets. So the only thing that we're saying that people should really pay attention to is being able to create challenges or quizzes which allow the group of people you bring together to have fun and enjoy trying to solve a problem with one another. This is very much in the spirit of, quizzes, riddles, games, role plays, and board games. And I really would encourage everyone to, when they run a training like this, no matter what you do, just make sure that you create a fun environment which allows people to kind of talk through these problems and participate with one another. The real key is just don't do the one-to-many thing, make sure that you're getting everyone to participate. So I'll pause there. Go on, Tom. Sorry. Yes.
That diagram flashed past a little bit too quickly for me. Are we going to follow up on that later on?
You're spot on, Tom. Thank you so much. That's an excellent point. And in fact, we're about to go into it right now. I'll even show you. I promise it's coming up. So I'm just going to break down each one of the roles first in terms of the key roles you need inside of a dojo to make the thing work. So the first thing is yourselves, all you good people out there who want to run training. You will take on the role of a sensei. And so to be a little bit, again, to just have a bit of fun with it, you want to kind of embrace your Yoda. The goal of a sensei is not to be the teacher. The goal of a sensei is to create a good learning scenario, and to try to help people act out the game so that they can have fun with trying to solve the challenge. Again, don't be the teacher. Enable other people in that dojo to be able to teach one another. But again, we'll come back to learning challenges. The real point I'm making here is just try to be a person who's really not about hogging the spotlight, but about trying to empower other people to show their knowledge and to share their knowledge with other people so that they all can work with one another. So to go back to that diagram, there's the sensei up in the corner. That's yourselves, and you will have pre-scripted a good learning challenge or a good problem set. You'll put it up on a whiteboard or even a little laptop. And what you'll do is you'll walk the people through the scenario and the learning challenge. You'll assign a hands and a brain, and you'll allow those two people to kind of work with the group to be able to solve the problem. So let me pause there. Is there any questions? Tom, stop me here.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused. So you said something about a laptop to do with a sensei. Is this the person that is, do you touch the laptop at all or type anything when you're a sensei?
Very good point. No, you don't. It's really important that the only thing you really have is kind of the whiteboard or a piece of paper which shows the problem. Your job is all about preparation. So, spending a couple of hours working through a problem set and then listing that problem set is all you need to do. Once you've listed that problem set and explained it to the group, the scenario, then it's up to the group along with their leaders, who are the brain and the hands, who I'll cover in a moment, to be able to explain that. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm guessing that this sensei Yoda figure just kind of stands there in the corner and kind of manages by exception, if you will. So if things are going on track and everyone's working through the problem, they can just nod. And if things are going off track, if it looks like it's going on a massive tangent, then that's the time when the sensei jumps in and says, well, I think that might not be the best way to do that. Have you thought about another way to do that?
Absolutely, Tom. That's perfectly said. I absolutely could not agree more. Let's move on. Let's talk about what the brains and the hands do. So, and again, these can be various things, but the important thing to note about the brain is that it's just about assigning someone the leader. So as sensei, the first thing you'll do is you'll pick someone out of the group. I would say, hey, Tom, would you mind being the brain? And so Tom would stand up. He'd be the one person standing up, amongst the group. And he would be asking questions of everyone. He'd be, hopefully everyone's name tags are out, so I can point to somebody and say, oh, Susan, what do you think about this? What are your questions? It's not about having the answer. It's about asking really good questions. So the brain is the first really important role. The second important role at the head of the table, who's the only person touching a computer actually, is the hands. And the hands, their job is to be hands and to be kind of dumb, to actually make mistakes. And I can't emphasize enough how important, all of you out there will know how when you first get to know, a new way of doing something in a command line, you'll make a lot of syntax mistakes. It's very easy to type things wrongly. And you want to make those mistakes because by making mistakes, you make everyone in the group feel better. So it's really important that as a sensei, you pick a good brain and hands who understand what they need to do because they'll model good behavior. What questions do we have about that? I'll go back to the diagram here and we can talk a little bit about what brain and the hands do.
Well, I think from what I'm understanding, all the hands needs to do is type whatever the brain tells it, right?
Bingo. That's the essence.
And so I can guess if you're got someone who wants to participate but isn't necessarily happy talking in front of a bunch of people, they might be more comfortable just typing on the laptop. Oh,
absolutely. And at first, you'll find that people are really nervous about being a hands because it's like, oh, I don't want to make mistakes in front of people. However, it turns out in the end that it's actually one of the roles that the people love the most because they don't really have to think. They get a really good chance to allow their hands to kinesthetically learn. And kinesthetic learning is a really important part of what we do. If you think about how we use these pinchers and stealers all day long on our keyboard, getting them to have their own muscle memory is a really important part of coding and being able to do repetitive learning. So being hands is a really important role and something that it's essential that you make everyone in the room have a go at doing. So each time the sensei changes a problem set, or perhaps, it's just been a long time trying to solve a problem, you want to change out everyone in the room to have a go at being hands. And for that matter, you also want to make sure that they have a go at being the brain. So it's important that everyone takes their turn at being either the brain or the hands.
Is there a particular order that you do that in? Does the brain become the hands? How does that work?
You can really kind of do it any way you want, whatever's comfortable. In the past, I've seen it where people basically just rotate, because people do tend to sit around the table in a circular fashion, unlike my little cartoon here. And so it doesn't hurt to just naturally circulate people through. It is nice for the brain to be able to relax by just sitting down and being the hands for a while. Also, the brain tends to have a bit of sympathy in being the hands because they've just given a bunch of instructions. So it is a good pattern to follow, Tom. You're spot on there.
And the sensei stays the same.
The sensei can say that, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, yes, absolutely. The sensei stays the same because it's the sensei who knows the overall problem set. Everyone else in the room changes, but again, the sensei's the Yoda, the person who kind of is in the shadows in the back, you know, observing how people are doing things and just making sure people don't go really, really wrong with trying to solve the problem. Okay, let's push on just to what the participants quickly do. And we've already alluded to this a little bit. But when you, as a sensei, when you set up your dojo, it's obviously the most important thing you do is perhaps have a chat with a brain and a hands beforehand, because that'll allow you to make sure that they know what they're going in for. And obviously, there's all these resources for you to show them, pass them this link, this video, and they can learn about what their roles will be. But it really is important that when you set up the environment, if we're going to have a place that's just really diverse and allows everyone from pandas to monkeys to anyone in the community to participate in this activity, we need to make them feel like it's okay to ask questions and that it's not about knowing all the answers, but actually about asking questions. So having a good brain and hands is a great way to set that up. Making sure that everybody has a go at being brain and hands will help give them empathy for the way that you should actually learn these things. There's also other little tips and tricks, which I'd welcome anyone else suggesting, which are things like give treats out for when a person asks the questions, you know, have some sweeties to give to everybody, or maybe something healthier, apples or something, I don't know. Also, I've seen people use like lifeline cards, you know, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You put 3 cards on the table, and if the brain or the group is having trouble, they're allowed to use one of the lifeline cards, and the cards can say stuff like, have you tried Stack Overflow yet? Or other cheeky quotes or things like that. Phone a friend could be a joke. So anything like that. So any questions before we leave my nice little cartoon?
So I don't know, I've had all these ideas introduced. Could you just recap practically how it works from start to finish?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tom. That's a great point. So obviously what I'll do is I'll jump to kind of the basic formula that you'll work with. So the sensei will start and state a problem and put it up on the whiteboard there, up in the upper left-hand area. They'll ask questions, they'll set the scenario. The sensei will assign 2 new pair programmers. So one of those pair programmers will be the brain and the other ones will be the hands. The brain's job is to ask questions of the whole group. And the hand's job is to learn the syntax and to make lots of mistakes. The audience's job, if they're not being the brains or the hands, is to suggest things. And the brain and the sensei will often go around and ask all the participants, what are you thinking right now? What's your thought process in this? How are you thinking about solving this problem? And then naturally, once you've solved the problem, then you rinse, wash, and repeat. So once the problem's been solved, the sensei will write up a new problem or a new level to the problem. The sensei will have the brain and the hands switch out to a new set of people, and then you'll just run through that same process all over again. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I can see that audience participation is pretty important here, because at the front, you've got the 2 people, the hands is typing, the brain's kind of coordinating what should be typed, but the brain would obviously rely on everyone else in the room to figure out what should actually be done, and also allow them to inform their brains that the suggestion that they've just made is perhaps not a good one.
Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point. So quickly, unless there's any more questions in the chat or anything, Tom, if you could keep an eye on that, I'll move on to just quickly what we're going to be doing in Austin. So for those of you who are joining us in Austin and who are going to help be our senseis, we're going to try to set up the room in a parallel fashion. We really don't know how many people will obviously show up. This is very much alpha training. but we'll probably have 2 to 4 dojos set up in the room so that we can have multiple dojos going on at the same time. This is also just a great way to be able to do parallel training. So for those of you who have companies, or you're doing training at your university, or for your local meetup group, if you're ambassadors, this is a really great way to actually set up your training in such a way that you can have multiple people participating all at the same time, and also at different levels. So if you want to have, a group that's all about DevOps challenges, or a group that's about containers, or a group that's about cloud aware applications, so using the SDKs and the APIs, you can kind of be able to split those out and allow people to work in different ways. So that's kind of what you can expect in Austin as the first effort. But we'll also be using this with some of our up-and-coming application hackathons, which you'll hear more about in the future. Okay, any questions on that one?
So if I'm watching this next month, and unfortunately I've just missed the Austin Summit, what do I do then?
Thank you, Tom. Very good question. So naturally, we'll talk about this a little bit at the end, but you'll want to contact myself or contact the user committee mailing list, which is available online. If you just type into Google user committee and OpenStack, you'll be able to find the mailing list there. And there will be somebody there, most likely myself, who will hop in and be able to help get you started in participating to be able to run your own training. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, I'll push forward a little bit here. So challenges. So challenges are really the most important thing which a sensei do. It is all about the challenge when it comes to having a good dojo, which means you've got to do a little bit of prep time. What I'll do is, for those of you who want to see some exemplars of good challenges, I'll point you to the Etherpad link that I've got right up here on the left-hand side, the etherpad.openstack.org, the one that's /cloud-code-dojo-austin. There are links in there which go to the Perl community quizzes, the Ruby community quizzes, as well as some specific kata. And kata are the problem learning challenges, as the community calls them. Just to give you a little history, kata are not only, they're basically orchestrated pattern movements. You find them in obviously in martial arts, but you can also find them in Japanese theater as well as Japanese tea ceremonies. So I'm very keen for this not to be all male language. I want this to be something that is absolutely inclusive. But have a look at those different kata. Those are good exemplars. But one of the big points I'd make is that there's no formula for writing a good learning challenge. A good learning challenge, like I said, is like a riddle. It has certain features. For example, you'll often set a real-world scenario, and I'll demonstrate this later. You'll have people declare the roles that they're going to take. So we're a team of developers, and we're going to solve this problem, and I'm the project manager, and you're going to be the usability person, or something like that. It's good to give people roles. You want to provide levels in the challenges. You don't want to just say, here's the challenge, everybody should fix it. Instead, you should start with an easy challenge, a novice challenge, have an intermediate challenge so that once they graduate from the novice, they can move to intermediate. And then for the really gung-ho people on the team, there's an expert challenge, which you'll challenge them with and say, oh, you'll probably not be able to solve this, which will naturally help get people engaged. It's good to have constraints in your learning challenges. So like on the novice challenges, it doesn't hurt to provide a time limit on the challenge. And it's also good to say that the customer or the system have these constraints. The customer wants this, or you only have this much compute capability inside of the system, or some along those lines. And then last but not least, make sure that you always review the challenge you put forward. And oftentimes you can actually review that challenge by asking people to write a test. And I'll demonstrate that later on. So test-driven development's a great way to make sure that everybody embeds the learning as they progress. If there's any questions, Tom, do you have any questions on that side before I move on to what an example challenge looks like?
How important is the challenge? Can you just kind of throw together one quickly, or do you really need to think about a lot? Or
well, I do think that you need to spend about an hour creating a challenge. That's kind of my rule of thumb. And usually what that involves is like 15 minutes of really thinking about, the problems you've faced in the past. and then trying to figure out what a novice challenge would be, an intermediate challenge, and then an advanced challenge. The good news about that is that that's all that's really required as a sensei. Sitting down for an hour and figuring out what the challenges will be is all you need to then show up in the classroom, put the challenges, up in the dojo, and then assign people to run the challenge. So it really is, I can't stress this enough, it's one of the easiest ways to put together training. And it's also, believe it or not, one of the most effective. So you can spend, 2 or 3 days. I spent almost the better part of a day yesterday writing this presentation. And the truth of the matter is this style of learning is not as effective as problem-based and participatory learning. So you can spend a lot less time developing your training by doing this problem-based learning. Okay. I'm going to push this into what an example challenge looks like. So I've got it up on the slide there. So I've set a scenario, and the scenario is quite simple. And again, I'm basing this off of the My First App Guide, which Tom and several other of the community members helped create a little while ago. It's a really great resource. I'd highly encourage people to use the resource to help create their learning challenges. It'll make your job even less onerous to be able to just look over the My First App Guide and create challenges around it. So I've based it off of this one. My scenario is I've said, okay, there's a lab full of scientists, and they've just created a cool Fractals app. And the Fractals app is actually available in the My First App Guide. And those scientists, they want to be able to use that Fractals app in different ways. So they've required some things of it. They want to have it publicly accessible because they want other scientists to come along and use their Fractals app and play with it. They want to be able to modify the app at root and be able to get access to the application on the cloud. They want to be able to move the app around to other instances in case they want to be able to move it from this cloud or another cloud. And they want to be able to test the app's capacity on the size of image it is running. So those are the scenarios, if you will. And on the right side there are the challenges I've created. So I've first created a very simple novice challenge. And again, it would be this easy. You'd get up as a sensei, you would give the scenario, you'd assign some roles, and I would say, oh, Tom, I want you to be the brain, and Susan, I want you to be the hands. And now I want you to try to solve this problem with the group. So I want you to deploy the application, the Fractals image, on a small image and give it a public IP. I want you to write a test showing that the app is live, so some kind of ping test or something like that, or maybe something more creative. And I'm also going to give you a constraint of trying to get this all done in 5 minutes. So my goal here is to just try to get the group enlivened and engaged. So obviously, that's not the way that everybody would do this. There's different ways to propose novice challenges. So Tom, what do you think of that novice challenge? Does that make sense to you? Is there a different way you might propose that challenge?
Oh, well, I think it's a good challenge. It really depends, I guess, on the background of the students you're expecting. So for people who are coming into cloud computing for the first time, they might be application developers, they might be good programmers, but they don't know what an image is or a public IP address is. It might be challenging for them to discover all of that information and get the app started up and written a test in 5 minutes. So if you're going to come into that kind of learning environment, you might take it up a notch. You might, for example, make your novice challenge a little bit simpler, like, find out what images are available on this cloud and do that in 5 minutes.
Oh, and that's perfect, Tom. So this is exactly the conversation this community should be having. So as we start to gain more and more sensei and trainers, it's all about having conversations about what good learning challenges are for different learning levels. There's no reason why we shouldn't be teaching kids how to use OpenStack clouds. There's no reason why we won't be teaching app devs or DevOps or even business managers. So being able to have a community where we share this conversation is going to be absolutely invaluable. Obviously, I've probably aimed this learning scenario at probably someone who's already experienced, but very much myself. You always model your learning on yourself and the way you understand things, which is something to be really mindful of as a trainer. So I've also posted an intermediate challenge and an advanced challenge there. I'm not going to run over them because basically the goal is to just kind of show that if the group gets done with the novice challenge, I'll say, okay, fantastic. You've done a really great job. I'm going to switch out the brains and the hands, and I'd like you to now take on the next challenge. So you've done a great job. You've got the Scientist Fractals app up and working in the cloud. I now want you to actually change the app and to be able to do different things with it. So create some security groups for it, punch holes in the firewall, write a test to show that the scientists can get access to their app. And then an advanced challenge, being able to scale that app across multiple instances and to have a test that actually shows that. So again notice that in each one of these challenges, I've provided a basic kind of test to make sure that the participants actually agree on how they've actually learned the information. How do we know that people, when they've attended training, actually know the information? Well, they need to write a test. By writing a test or taking a test, we actually know that they've learned. And if we do it in a fun way, it won't be a horrible, test kind of environment.
And so I remember before, going back several slides, you had a room set up with multiple of these dojos with tables that were available at various levels. So if you've got challenges at varying different levels from the newbie through to the expert, how do you schedule that? Do people move from like the newbie table to the DevOps table, or can you be an expert and you just get expert challenges all day? How do you think that works?
Oh, spot on, Tom. Really good question. Thank you. So one of the nice ways, if you start to get really big training rooms like this and you start to get like 3 or 4 dojos going on at the same time, what you'll do is you'll start the whole thing off by bringing everybody into the middle. You'll have each sensei get up and you'll talk about that. You'll have the sensei talk about the learning level that they're going to work with. So naturally, there's a bit of coordination to be done to make sure that you've got the right senseis in the room and the right different levels of training. But that's a great way to allow people to then split up and to go to the different trainings. And for the most part, what's nice about this kind of modular parallel training style is that you can have anywhere from like, I've had dojos where there's been 2 or 3 people in them, and they've been absolutely fantastic. Where once you get beyond like 15 to 20 people in a dojo, it starts to become a little bit complex and difficult. However, you are able to scale from 3 to 20 people in a dojo, which is a great way to actually take consideration for if a person decides, oh, I don't want to do a noob challenge, I'm going to move over more to the intermediate challenge. Does that make sense, Tom?
Absolutely.
Cool. So last but not least, to try and get people thinking in the right way, and this is all about trying to build this community and get people to work together, I want us to talk about actually creating your own challenges. So one of the challenges which I'm all giving to you is to actually have a go at creating a challenge. And I've set up a GitHub repository to allow you to submit those challenges. I'll talk about that more in a second, but if you want to load up those links, the first thing I would suggest you do is head on over to developer.openstack.org/firstapp and have a look at the index there. I will actually, let me pull this up just quickly so everybody can see it. So here is the your first app guide application. And one of the easiest ways to get started on creating a nice learning challenge is just go have a look at this excellent little guide. You'll see sections on getting started, introductions to the application, scaling out, making it durable, block storage, orchestration, networking. Take any one of those, click on them, read through it, and then start to write down what you think would make for a good learning challenge. Tom, if you don't mind, do you want to pick one of the chapters that you particularly like? Maybe it's one of the chapters you wrote or along those lines. Sorry to put you on the spot like this, but it's all about participatory learning.
Not a problem. So one of my favorite chapters is the chapter entitled Make It Durable, which is all about OpenStack object storage. Excellent.
So have a look over that, Tom, and start to organize your thoughts. I'll walk everybody through this. What I'd like you to do, Tom, is while I'm talking, is have a think of a scenario for making it durable. And again, have fun with this. It doesn't need to be a serious scenario, but just think of a scenario of why people would want to make it durable, give it some real world context. Create a problem statement. Let's just do a novice one. I don't expect you to do intermediate and advanced right away. Just think of the easiest possible problem statement. And again, some of the best problems are the problem statements which you yourself have had difficulty figuring out. Because obviously we all know in doing application development, DevOps and app dev work, there's obviously a dozen ways to skin a cat. There's always different ways to do things. So those are some of the best problems, because if you can frame those problems well, then the dojo will have a chance to explore it in different ways. And that's where it becomes fun for the sensei, because you can see people solve problems in ways that you never would have thought of before. And that's a great way to do it. And finally, Tom, the last thing I'd like you to do is to think about structuring your problem into those different learning levels. So whether it's novice, intermediate, or advanced, and always keeping in mind that the novice problem can never be easy enough. By having a really, really, really simple first novice problem, that'll get everybody in the room engaged, which is really what you want when you're trying to bring everybody together. While Tom is doing that, the last and the real essence thing is if you guys take one of these chapters and start to break it out, if you head on over to the GitHub link that I've set up there under the issues tracker, so AppDev-training/challenges or -OpenStack/issues, you can start to propose some of those issues and those problems in there. And actually, I will show that GitHub repo to you. So if you just head on over to issues here, Tom, you can obviously open up a new issue, and you can say proposal for a new, learning challenge. And this will just help you as a place to get going with some ideas, which will also allow other people to comment and leave their own thoughts and ideas on it. So Tom, can I have you propose some ideas? And again, there's no right answers here. It's all about us having a conversation. But do you have a scenario you want to propose for making it durable?
I do indeed. That was tough to figure out on such a quick time frame, but I think I've got one for you. So we're talking about the same fractal application that our lab of scientists have as per the previous demo scenarios. And I think that object storage is a really fantastic way to bring durability to any scalable cloud application. So I think a really good learning challenge for a novice is work out how to back up your collection of fractal images to OpenStack object storage.
Okay, say that again, Tom. I'm going to type it up into the... So work out
how to back up your collection of fractal images to OpenStack object storage.
That's great. OpenStack object storage. I'm going to type this one in for you, Tom, so you can talk, but I will show the group what I'm doing. So just in the issue tracker there, I'm just putting out Tom's question, nice and simple. And the next step is, Tom, obviously, so, and then, yes, so the first point is the scenario. So we're sticking with the scenario of a lab of scientists wanting their app on the cloud. We might put in some more detail there that they, that the app has become really popular, and therefore they're doing, I don't know, they're doing some kind of experiment. They've enabled the app to actually run basic computational mathematical experiments. And so they want this thing to be durable and to be able to save these images as they're created. Maybe they're creating an art gallery or something, so have fun with the scenario. And then Tom's obviously put forward the excellent question here, which is work out how to back up your collection of fractal images with object storage. And Tom, do you have a novice sort of challenge for that? I mean,
sorry, I misunderstood. That was what I'd propose as the novice challenge.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so there's the novice challenge. And then is there any constraints you want to set for this? Are there any time limits? Are there any kind of key things?
I believe that this should be able to be done fairly quickly. Because essentially it's just one for loop over a bunch of files on a directory with an API call. So this is something that you should be able to do in less than 10 minutes.
Excellent. And do you think that there is a test that they should be able to run against this, being able to make sure that their object storage was achieved?
Well, if you're uploading things, how you test them is by downloading them. So you can download all of the images that you uploaded and compare them with the ones that you uploaded to work out if they're the same.
Perfect. Well done, Tom. So you've just created your first learning challenge, or at least the scaffold for a first learning challenge. And believe it or not, that's really easy, isn't it? I mean, it's not something difficult to do. Obviously, Tom still needs to spend some time creating an intermediate and an advanced challenge. But other than that, he's kind of submitted his first new challenge. And then obviously, what we'll start to do is start to engage the wider community in being able to create these and to be able to talk about them more. So before we move on, any questions there, Tom? Did that make sense to you?
Yes, that made sense to me. And in fact, as you were typing, I came up with an idea that might be good for an intermediate challenge.
Oh, yes, please. Excellent. You're on a roll.
Okay.
Okay. So once Tom obviously has done his novice, intermediate, and advanced challenge, what we really want to do is we want the community to share these challenges. So let me just quickly finish off this presentation by talking about how we want you to be able to share these different learning challenges. So, and this is a conversation that we're looking to have on the user committee mailing list, maybe some of the other developer mailing lists as well. We're still kind of figuring out who are the best groups to go to in the massive OpenStack community. But we might have a new challenge tag inside of one of the mailing lists, or a quiz tag or something like that, very much like Ruby and Perl and the way that they actually do their monthly or weekly quizzes. We could run a monthly quiz where I would take Tom's challenge and I would post it to the group and say, hey, this is a cool challenge which would be great for people to be able to trial and suggest different ways of solving it. And there's some great examples of this on the Ruby and Perl channels, which I'd really like us to mimic inside the OpenStack community to try to get some participation. We also might put up an IRC channel or something like that to figure out a way to enable people to talk about these challenges. But again, just join the user committee mailing list and start to suggest these, because this is all about trying to engage application developers and to be able to bring application developers and DevOps together so that we have a common forum for understanding how to build good cloud applications. Last but not least, I will mention as just kind of a preview that we're planning on utilizing these training sessions, these cloud app dojos, as ways of being able to train up different app hackathon teams. So we've just held a really successful app hackathon in Taipei, Taiwan, where it just was absolutely manic. There's so many people there, university students, companies, government people, and they all came along prior to the hackathon, and they participated in different training. So we have another app hackathon coming up in Guadalajara prior to our summit in Barcelona. And the idea is that the month before the app hackathon, people will be able to come along, every Wednesday night, and they'll actually be able to participate in one of these app dojo trainings. And one of the things we'd like to be able to do is actually to find some sponsorship for people in the community who are regularly creating good learning challenges. So Tom, hopefully we can find you some sponsorship to go on down to the app hackathon and provide some training. Does that sound interesting or enticing?
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. And it is quite cool, actually. Stay tuned for further announcements about the hackathon in Guadalajara. Last but not least, of course, is the GitHub link, which is the kind of, the place where we'll try to store all of these challenges. It's also the place where people can then continue to be able to branch and to do pull requests as they create new learning challenges and we get them scaffolded up so that everybody will be able to use these challenges. And it'll just be a lot easier. And it's one of the main goals of all of this is I really want this community to be one that makes everyone's job easier in terms of doing trainings for their different universities, institutions, companies, foundations, and everywhere in between. So the more that we can all contribute to this in the spirit of open source, it'll make all of our lives easier in terms of actually making more people aware of how to actually build and architect different app dev trainings. Other than that, I think we've almost reached the end here. Are there any final questions? Tom, you good?
So, I'm good. It seems like the best way to get started is to, if I'm coming to the Austin Summit in a couple of weeks, turn up there for that particular session. Stay tuned to the OpenStack mailing list and follow that GitHub, right?
You've got it. Spot on, Tom. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating in this, and hopefully see you all in Austin. If we don't see you in Austin, hopefully see you in Barcelona. If we don't see you in Barcelona, please get in contact online. We have lots of virtual forums to engage people. And look, the one thing I will say about this community as a closing note is I guarantee you it's going to be fun. You know, being able to teach people and engage them in how cool the cloud is and what we can do with it is really, it's going to be a fun community to be a part of. So please ping me on IRC at Twitter. I'm available at DFF Flanders. Grab me on email, or even better yet, send a email to one of the mailing lists, and that's the place where we can really start to have this conversation. Other than that, I will sign off. Tom, I will thank you once again for being my guinea pig here and working through this. And yes, thanks again. All right, I will bid everyone adieu. Thanks again.